to From Intent to Impact, a Product to Change podcast. Over the last 5 years, the brand, licensing, toy, fashion, and retail industry has been on one of the most significant transformational journeys in its history. Which once felt like a niche sustainability conversation has become central to how businesses design, source, manufacture, and grow. This podcast is all about capturing that journey, honestly, openly, and from the people who are actually shaping it and who are actually part of our POC community. We're looking back at what's worked, what hasn't, the decisions that have actually defined this moment in time. And just as important, we're actually looking forward to the next 5 years and what it's going to take to build an industry that is future fit for the industry. So those that don't know, I'm Helena Mansell-Stouffer. I started this crazy operation that is Products to Change, and I'm delighted to be joined by somebody who's really been at the heart of this transformation, Greg Simmons, Director of Sustainable Product Development at Moose Toys. Greg, hello officially.
Yeah. Hello, Helena. Great to see you again. Thank you for the lovely intro.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Looking forward to the chat.
Me too, and digging into it a little bit more. And for those that don't know, Greg's actually in Australia and I'm in London. So what time is it again, Greg?
It's now 7:05,
7:05.
TikTok says.
And he doesn't have any alcohol with him to help the conversation. He's got stuff to do after this conversation.
No, yeah, definitely got to jump in the car. So there's none of that shenanigans yet. Maybe afterwards I might pick a bottle of vino while we're out.
Oh, very nice. So those that don't know Greg, that have joined us to have a good old listen into what the industry has been up to, Greg actually brings the most amazing wealth of experience and insight into actually how meaningful change actually happens inside a large global toy organization. And today we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper. But before we do that, I'd really like to know who Greg is outside of work. Most people might not know who you are. I like to ask the question of, what are you reading at the minute?
So it's really it's a bit cheesy. It's so far as the title, the ultimate air fryer cookbook.
Ooh.
I know it's not exactly Mills and Boon, and it's not exactly some great piece of prose, but certainly I was gifted a lovely air fryer for Christmas. I resisted the temptation for a long time, and now the thing is, I've gone down the whole rabbit hole of air frying, and I've got to say it's transformational.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me how. I don't have an air fryer.
So in my house, we've got a oven. When Noah parked his boat up and took all the animals off, he also took off the appliances, and one of those was the oven that sits in our house. And so this is not exactly the most efficient piece of kit, especially in summer. You don't want to fire it up because actually it acts more like a radiator than it does. And so just on the power savings alone, but actually it's I am now a convert to the air fryer. I think that every good kitchen needs one, and now I found myself delving into how can I do this? How can I do? So the next one's going to be I've got to try the old crispy pork belly. So I've been researching those ones as well. So yeah, it's a bit geeky when it comes down to it. I'm into my air fry cookbook.
It's what's consuming your time, and I love that. And actually, I think there is a big sustainability story behind an air fryer. So we're here talking about sustainability. That wasn't the intention to kind of get stuck into an air fryer conversation, but it's part of your world, Greg. And I'm sure lots of people will probably be nodding along, and maybe even DM you.
There'll be loads of people saying, "God, it took you long enough."
Well, except I still don't have one, so I'm probably like the last person that hasn't got one.
I can highly recommend them then.
Okay, you know what? I might have to. I've been resisting. I don't even have a microwave.
We could just sack the sustainability conversation off. We could just talk about air frying if you want.
Exactly. How to build a better life. I love that. Thank you for that, Greg. I think it's just really nice just to get to know you a little bit more, to see what's going on in your life outside the craziness that is work that obviously consumes a huge amount of your time. Now, at POC, we've been really lucky to work with Moose for the last few years. And I know in my previous life, before I even started POC, I worked with the Moose team really closely on the business side of stuff. And even at POC, we're really lucky to have such a wonderful toy community. So, we get to kind of see how all of the toy companies are kind of working from the inside. And what really fascinates me is how different Moose is. And as a company and how you operate as a company. And I'd love to dig a little bit into that later. But
Cool.
before we get started there, it's kind of, what brought you into the world of sustainability? Kind of, I'd love to know
Oh,
your journey into
so
this crazy world.
actually that's a pretty deep question, because I've got my checkered past. I've got my yin and yang. So my background is actually more than 2 decades in professional motorsport, and in that was also working on some very unusual vehicles and unusual engines, and getting involved with manufacturer programs. The first hybrid I worked on at Le Mans was actually way back in 19. I'm going to show my age now. 1989, 1998. Yeah, which
Wow.
was there was a so the world is sort of, efficiency and sustainability is actually, there's a lot of similarities in motorsport than there is in sustainability. I won't really go into them, and somebody's saying, that sounds like a lot of old cobblers, but I'll definitely hold my own up in that argument. Um, but then, when it roll the clock forward, and I was so we started work designing electric vehicle recharging points in the UK in 2003, and I was personally, as my own business in there was December 6th, 2006. So now I've got almost 20 years ago, with Westminster City Council, we fit our first on-street vehicle recharging point just opposite the entrance to the Lyceum.
Wow.
So, and then we ended up with thousands of them all around the world and sold out of that business. And then, the last thing I was working on before I moved back here was actually I was the chief engineer for a high efficiency internal combustion engine program, looking at bringing fuel reduction in, and then ended up at Moose as their head of engineering. And then I had a sabbatical, actually went back in to develop large scale renewable hydrogen generation assets for one of the energy companies here. And then I ended up talking with Yost from Moose again, and it was a passing conversation. And then it ended up that I was ended up back there in the in the sustainability role.
Isn't that just
So yeah.
fascinating? From you're an engineer,
Hmm.
in your heart, and fascinating that you did all of that in the motorsport industry, and actually just how the world of sustainability, engineering differently, has been part of that conversation for so much longer than the toy industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been one of the enjoyable things. You talk about transferable skill sets, because
Mhm.
I'm chartered with the Institute of Mechanical Engineers in the UK. Big plug there for them.
Yeah.
And one of the great things is actually having that resource
Mm.
and seeing, a global discussion on it. And there are a lot of things going on, a lot of other industries that are transferable, but also the skill sets are transferable. And it's not just in engineering. It's also when we talk about, areas like, finance and accounting, these people also can be ported over into understanding like some of the reporting requirements that we get within the sustainability field. So no, it's been really fun to actually go from, just the pure engineering end and then get into the sustainability. But actually, when I look back on it, they're kind of intertwined.
Mm.
It's all about material sciences and processes, and I've got X amount of energy. I only want to use less. And then, so they're very, very similar in regards to the core principles.
But I guess the industries are very different. If you look at the motorsport
Hmm.
industry, and the motor industry, so much bigger than the toy industry. And I guess,
Yeah.
I don't know whether the money that's put into research and development is so much more. And actually, just even how the car industry is changing to kind of more of a leasing model rather than an ownership model, just they're so much further ahead in there. And actually, I'm probably going to go off on a totally different tangent than what we expected, but I'm totally happy to do that because it's so fascinating. Because in a way, you get to see what we want the industry to be, but you've done it in another industry. So for you to kind of take that over into this industry, obviously with the challenges and complexities that there is within the toy
Mm.
industry, but like you said, there's so many similarities within that. So you go from engineering and electrification of the Westminster, Westminster Council in
Absolutely.
London, back
Yeah.
to Australia, and to work at a toy company who's super innovative. Um,
Hmm.
with your engineering mind, did you start working within like the toy R&D team first? Is that kind of where you landed, or did you land straight into a sustainability role?
Total transparency. Because I was still working this project, and when you in certain projects, you have to physically be there. And
Yeah.
because I reverse emigrated back to Australia after living 20 years in England, I actually got out yeah, just looked at the map and I said, I'm going to get a job within 5 Ks, 3 miles of my house. And there was an advert for this company called Moose, and
Look,
uh, and yeah, so they'd never had a sort of a head of engineering role, and they went it was just coincidence. And I'd sort of made the decision at that stage because I didn't really want to travel. And yeah, it's really important when you work in, say, professional motorsport that you go to the circuit. So if you're not prepared to travel, then don't do it. I'd give that advice. And then if you do want to do it, then you can see the world. Been fortunate enough to do that as well. But
yeah.
it was one of the things moving back. It was like, actually I just needed a bit stability and for a time, and it was like, all right, let's move out of professional sport, move back into industry for a bit, and let's face it, racing cars are a lot like toys.
They're big toys, aren't they?
They're big. They're just a bit bigger.
I love that. So you're like, okay, this is where I want to live. This is a company that's near me. I did something pretty similar quite a few years ago. This is where I want to live. This is who's near me. So I have to work there. How do I get a job there? So is
Yeah.
that kind of what you did? How do I get a job there? Who do I know? Who do I know somebody who knows somebody? How do I influence this? And so you managed to influence them with your magic of genius to create this role.
It's actually the first job I've formally applied for.
Wow.
I
I love that.
Yeah.
So you got the job and you're like, yeah, okay, I got the job. Let's see how
Yeah.
this goes. And I guess the biggest worry is, are you going to be really interested and engaged in it, I suppose? Because if you've done this kind of sexy engineering stuff where you're on the forefront of innovation, like how do you make sure that you still get joy in what you're doing if you decide to do something different? Hey, Greg.
I think they always say that if you enjoy what you do, you don't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And there is a real and the in the area, especially in sustainability,
Mm.
this is if you don't need motivation, this is actually a really good place to be for myself. Like, so I don't need the motivation. You get up every day and you go, I know I'm going to be doing something. So and now we're getting a clearer understanding of what that something is, and
Mm.
actually where it brings real commercial benefit to the
Yeah.
business, and not just hitting sustainability goals. That's only part of it. That there is that, and that's actually a really interesting time. And so the opportunity that's there is incredibly interesting to me. So, whilst I've been involved in motor racing, there's been other industries. I've had several companies at the same time. And so there's a lot of things that outside of purely just say, cars and all the other bits and pieces that I find interesting. And it's
Mm.
actually here at the moment, I feel that actually it's a good place to work. I'm enjoying it. And I always measure that as like, why do I get up and do it? If I'm
Yeah.
enjoying it, hey, happy days, let it continue.
Yeah. Love that. And so if I go back to pardon me, the journey, the sustainability journey of Moose, and I used to work really closely with Di when I was on a business
Hmm.
facing role many, many, many years ago before I started Products of Change. And then Di got in touch with me when I started Products of Change, say, Moose want to go on their journey, not quite sure where to start. Um, and so then, into like, well, you got to go and um to have a baseline, look at your impact, where you're a big, go
Hmm.
ahead and do all of those little bits. And
Yep.
then it seemed like out of nowhere, probably within a year and a half, there was a team on board. You'd mapped your impact. You were just like, we are doing this. Like there was some real force behind this, kind of on the inside, because I just had a conversation with Di, then she goes off and then comes back a year and a half later with you and a team of people that are engaged. Like what happened in that time? And I guess is what 4 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, I think that the thing that really kicked it off for him, we did, the first area that was really under some kind of commercial pressure to move would have been our packaging.
Mm,
And so the idea that actually we were going to move away from, packaging formats and materials to the ones that you can use the word more sustainable, that are using high recycled content, that use the materials that are recyclable curbside at the end of life. This was actually probably really the first area. So when I came back into Moose, we sat in an area called Creative Services. Was actually working with the packaging engineering team, and it was just kind of we were probably in the wrong section of the business, but at the same time, you got to sit somewhere,
mm,
and the ability to sort of sit down and actually come up with those better designs was the driver. I mean, one of the first examples we banned PVC in our thermoplastic blisters because they're a contaminant in the PET waste stream. And so
Yeah.
looking at something as simple as that, this was like turning things on its head.
Mm,
And they managed to do, us as a business and our supply chain, we were able to do that. And then from there, it's just got better and better and better. So really, the first drivers, I think, were also the consumer sentiment.
mm,
And then maybe there's multiple actually, because we've been reporting into Walmart's one of our biggest customers, and they have Project Gigaton. They've had Project Gigaton for many, many years now. And part of the deal is that they want to, they're actually very, on the forefront of saying, we want to clean up our supply chain, remove a gigaton of waste,
mm,
hence the name. And so you had maybe a sort of a confluence of pressures. You had like, there's a little bit internal saying, okay, we've got, and where that driver to come out to remove PVC from that was from APCO, the Australian Packaging Covenant. Moose has been a signature since 2012, a signatory since 2012. So they're saying we've got to remove materials of concern from our packaging. So it's like, all right, let's embrace that. And that's
yeah.
now happening in every one of our developed markets.
Mm,
Then you've got the consumer going, actually, how do I make a more informed choice over what I'm buying? But also our customer, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Amazons, these are also, they have their own sustainability goals. So I'd say there
mm.
was multiple reasons for it to get going.
And how did that, was it Paul and Manny that said, we need to do this? Did I get somebody to do this, put a team together? Or was it more like, how much came from the top down and how much came from kind of just organically kind of finding your way through to what those impact areas are through people around you?
So I think maybe the easiest way to answer that is that it was more of it wasn't this hugely formulated plan, but it was a top-down instruction. Where Paul had signed our letter of commitment to set a net zero target on January the 20th, 2023.
Okay.
And so in that, you've got a lot of work, almost, between 6 and 12 months of work of preparing the owners of the company to actually sign that commitment off.
Mm,
So, you know, the decision was very, very clear. It's like, actually, this is something that we're going to move forwards with. And that was, I think, solidified by Paul signing, our letter of commitment to set a science-based target to be
yeah.
net zero.
I love that because actually, I think so many big companies get caught up in the bureaucracy of who's responsible for doing what. But actually, I think, like you said, Paul just signing in that commitment, I guess just sends the signal of what you're doing. And then it's up to everybody within their departments to figure out how they do that.
Yeah, I think we even announced it. We used the LA Toy Fair. I think it was the event that it was actually the
Mhm.
signing was to coincide with.
Yeah.
So it was a very deliberate and strategic decision that was made by the owners of the business. So
Mm.
yeah, pretty cool.
I think it's amazing because I know some, yeah, and I know the conversations that happen in boardrooms of maybe not privately owned companies actually. And maybe that's the beauty of being a privately owned company that you can say, we're just going to do this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and there are a lot of people there. Some people who aren't with the business at the moment who were actually party to doing that, and that was, they need some. There was one of my old colleagues, Chloe, who was in the sustainability side.
Mm.
She had a lot of input into actually getting the owners across the line, educating them as well. So it was a real sort of team effort, I think, at that stage. It
Yeah.
was, and it was. I think it really did allow then everything else to sort of fall into place.
Mm.
Certainly not micromanagers, and having that broad brush, okay, this is what we're going to go and do, certainly did make it easier. And,
Yeah.
since then we've gone on, it was just last year we were able to actually have our our SBTI validated.
Amazing.
So yeah, we're all on the journey now.
You're making that progress. And actually, just so people are listening in, I know that you got commitments that take till 2040. What are your overarching commitments? And then also, first of all, what are your overarching commitments? Let's just go with that, Greg.
So we have near-term targets. That is to be net zero scope 1 and 2 by, I think it's 2030. And part of that is also to be using 100% renewable energy in our owned and operated sites. So and that's actually, most recently we've actually just set up our pathway. So we're now looks like we've planned well before that date. Our head office will be 100% renewable. We've just renegotiated our energy contracts with our supplier, and in the whole scheme of things, it's now material. We have a pathway that's established, and now all we do is move forwards from where we are, ramping in the amount of renewables over the next 2 to 3 years until we reach 100%. So, and we're looking to do that at our other offices as well.
That's amazing. And then I know you've got your stretch targets that take you to 2040, is that right? Which are
So
kind
that
of
is absolute net
related.
zero.
Yeah.
Net zero over scopes 1, 2, and 3. So that's the big work. So part of the near-term one is also supplier engagement.
Yeah.
So we have to engage with a certain number of our suppliers, and the goal is for the certain number of them to set a science-aligned target as well. And so, that's been one of the areas that is obviously the most work because it's involving third parties, it's involving our supply chain.
Mm.
Uh, Confidence level right now is very good. We have a great relationship with our supply chain. We actually we run something very similar to the CDP supply chain survey, and we in the first year that we did it, we had a 67% response rate from our supply chain. They
Wow.
say that the first time you do this, the average response rate is 10%. The last time we did it, which was last year, we had 100%. So every one of our suppliers responded, and the quality of the data was because we've got one of our sustainability team based in our China office. Shout out to Suina Lin. She is a legend in dealing and talking with our vendors and engaging with them on a very personal level. And we're able to go through and we can check power bills and look at gas bills, and we actually see real numbers. And we're confident that what we're seeing on paper is correct as well. So you can't go in and just send this off and say, you could have any number down. You do need to go and ask the question.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's been to see the response from our supply chain has actually been fantastic. Like, it's been really good.
And I think that's probably a lot to do with your relationship, like you said, with your supply chain, how much they trust you, how much maybe if you say you're going to do something, you do it. It feels like you've got a partnership with your supply chain rather than a dictatorial, we are doing this. If you want our business, you've got to do this. Feels very different.
Yes, that is actually an area that we strive for. I was out there last year for a couple of weeks, and we were going through went through all our print vendors and quite a number of our larger OEMs. And the one of the things that we do when we do our presentations, we do a multilingual to make, so unfortunately you got to inflict a bit of global PowerPoint. The one of the things that we did is we try to explain, like why we're asking for a lot of this sustainability information.
Mm.
And why do we want all this packaging information? Why do we want this information about, the attribution of our business to their factories and science like that? And it was actually being able to sit down and talk to them about our legal requirements, our reporting requirements. So now we've got, extended producer responsibility taxes that, over packaging, over
Yeah.
product, over battery, waste electronics, so we need that data, and that is a legal requirement for us to supply it. But then also you've got your requirements now for sustainability reporting, ASRS. But
Mm.
on the other side, we report into Project Gigaton. To do that, we use CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, as
Yeah.
the central data collection piece, and we do that for both Walmart and for Target US. And in doing that, we need their data. And so when you can actually sit down with them and go, hey, this is the reason why. They're actually really incredibly receptive. Who knew that actually just being nice, asking and explaining what you need the information for would lead to a good outcome?
That's the only way you get stuff done, though, isn't it? Properly in a really meaningful way. And I know that you worked with the team internally. You put a whole program together, didn't you, to engage your supply chain? And I know we spoke about this last year, and you just really simplified it, Greg. And I'd love for you to explain that to me, because then hopefully others can kind of take some of those simplification ideas away and kind of maybe look at how they integrate this across their supply chain too, because that's where the biggest opportunity for reduction is, isn't it, in that whole supply chain and material choices as you go down that line. How did you work with your supply chain to do that?
You just got to be really nice. You just got to try,
Just be
they're,
nice to
they're,
people.
yeah, that's actually, to be honest, that's a big part of it. Maybe coming back to one of your first points, you said there's something different about moves. one of the feedback that we get is that we do engage with our supply chain differently to a lot of other toy brands, and it's this sort of very personal, because we're all in the same boat. Our problems we pass down to the suppliers, but some of the problems that we get it passed down from our customers as well.
Yeah.
So it's that everyone's sort of linking arms, and you've got to share information. Do they if we're using a material that we're now got an additional EPR charge because the region doesn't want it, what that does is that actually devalues their product by increasing the cost of goods sold. So what do they want to do? They want to be competitive too.
Yeah.
So I think the main thing is actually just being approachable, nice, and explaining the why. So then they can go, I get it. I understand why, because they're business people like everybody else,
Well, they
and
want business. They want
they
they
want.
want friends. They want to partner with you.
Yeah, and everyone's got business stresses, and what you want to be able to do is say this is the reason why, and then they go, okay, and then the next part of that is actually finding the right person to talk to. So it's very common, when you're working with dislocated supply chains and design offices, that you may not be talking to exactly the right person, but
Yeah.
when you go there and you say this is the information, suddenly someone will turn around pretty quickly and go, you need to go and speak to so and so. They need, and then it's about building relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally agree. I mean, businesses are full of people. You get to the right person, it unlocks opportunity. To me, it comes down to
absolutely. Yeah,
the jaws, doesn't it? So
yeah.
let's dig a little bit into maybe EPR, because I know you mentioned EPR, and I know there's a huge amount of legislation happening globally. We know the sustainability world has kind of been doing the okey cokey for the last couple of years, especially with what's going on in the US. But we can't get away from the fact that legislation is here. EPR is
Hmm.
coming fast in Europe, in the UK included in that. Even in America, even though federally there are things happening, all state bound, there's a lot of EPR
Hmm.
coming. And I know there's some people that we're working with who are kind of working with their design teams and even their buying teams to kind of integrate those decision levers on EPR to make sure that you're mitigating the tax at the end. Because the design team wouldn't normally think about an EPR tax. They'd just normally design to the best brief
No.
with the best material for that product. There wouldn't be a thought, there wouldn't be an end of life thought. So how have you kind of brought that back into the team to be thinking of that end of life because of all the EPR? Very complex because it's all
So
different rules in different places.
sticking to packaging, because we have an involvement with, say, APCO here, they're
Yeah.
aligned to many, many other peak bodies throughout the world. So what we see in their recommendations is mirrored in North America, is mirrored in the UK and Europe. So generally, it's a good for us. Actually, it's a good place to start, and that consolidation of materials. Designers wanted, I haven't met a designer yet that would turn around and say, actually, I want to make this really polluting thing that's hazardous to the environment. Never going to happen, that
They
conversation.
don't do it on purpose, do they? They're
So
stuck.
no, I'm gonna put lead and heavy metals back in it,
Yeah.
and all radioactive. No, it's not going to happen. So they're it's not like even pushing on an open door. The door's well open. They just go, how do we do it better? But for them to do it better, the supply chain needs to be set up.
Mm,
So the procurement teams need to know what to order.
yeah.
The factories need to be well ready to receive that order. So a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff is actually happens in the background about readiness. So
Yeah.
when somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to use, I want to, what is the choice I'm going to do? I'm going to do, how do I do it? Yeah, these are your choices." So it's almost like just changing the menu
Mm,
and consolidating stuff down. So you own the choices are, the ones that you want. So when
yeah.
you're working outside that remit, that it's not the norm.
Yeah.
So part of it is actually really normalizing your behaviors and the needs and the capabilities of the supply chain.
Yeah.
So inadvertently, when somebody goes and says, "Hey, I'm going to do I've got a packaging format and it's going to have cardboard and it's going to have a blister in it, that the blister automatically is going to have 30% post-consumer recycled." And in our case, our first port of call when it comes down to, say, cardboard in packaging is FSC recycled, which is 100% recycled fiber. So instantly you have an extremely high level of recycled content that is recyclable at the end of life. and the designer didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
They can focus on the product.
Yeah. Yeah, see, why
You
don't
know,
other people think about it so simply like that? Because the amount of conversations I have, the people that are doing it and doing it right, like you guys, are just like, this is not that hard. Just reduce it down into these are the best options. Let's just get those best options out there. Other people really faff with it. Oh, we need to try and do that. It's crazy. It actually isn't that complicated when you really reduce it down.
yeah,
So let's go back to some of those things that you did in packaging. So you took the PVC away. I know we had Wendy come to Expo last year and take the audience through some of the stuff that you've done, but I'd love you just to mention some of those, Greg, while we're here.
yeah. There's Wendy and Lauren in our LA office. They're packaging legends. You know,
Shout out to Wendy.
yeah, and also, and she's got there's one of her colleagues there, Lauren, also absolute consummate professional in this space. You know, there's so packaging, so removing oil-based ink, so everything's only aqueous at the moment. We have removed or reduced, so the use of we've actually established our packaging sustainability goals. So maybe I'll come start there first instead of getting into the micro bit. So we've got 5 packaging sustainability goals.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is, I'm going to have to test myself here. So the first one is, you know, using recycled and materials in our feedstocks that are recyclable at the end
Yeah.
of life. You know, that's the first one. And that's where the system has to be set up to enable it. From there, we also have plastic minimization. So plastic is not the enemy, especially when you're talking about security in store. So
Yeah.
this is one of those trade-offs is that, yes, you can choose purely cardboard and paper and fiber, but we have this term shop soiling, you know, or theft,
Mm.
and the brand owner gets billed for that. So if it's found that the packaging is not robust enough to actually sustain a certain amount of in-store abuse, then this has failed as a business, as
Mm.
a product. We also have totally plastic free. So, you know, the area that we actually use that in is e-com. Like that's the biggest area that is we do, and we've had some really great results. Like so with Amazon, they have what was called SIOC, now is called SIP, shipped in product packaging. No, the can do a completely plastic free. So no plastic glues, no plastic tape, all paper. So it's a cardboard. Even taking out poly bags, like you know, LDPE poly bags, are incredibly effective at reducing abrasion damage from transit. If you've
Mm.
got like a figurine that has it's had like 30 or 40 decoration ops, and the last thing you want to do is have it chafed in the packaging, and
Mm.
then it's damaged when it gets to the consumer. And so polybags are extremely good at preventing that. But then again, you go, well, we've got all these little plastic bags. So then we go over to tissue paper and actually proving that it works and getting everyone used to it. So very quickly, you can come up with these fantastic packaging formats that are
Yeah.
that are completely plastic free. One of the other ones, so we've got 2 more to go. So one of the other ones is called easy separation. So easy separation is about having where you have cardboard and you have a blister, and what they do is they come apart and they come apart clean.
Mm.
So there is no heat sealing, there is no adhesive attached to the PET blister. And what that means is that you do not contaminate the blister, and it has the highest recycling value to a materials recycling facility as it can. So what
Mm.
we're doing is we're thinking about the next person that engages with this, not the you know, the consumer's going to hopefully put them in the right bin,
Mm.
and that has the highest value possible. And the final one we have in packaging is air minimization. So looking at how we can prevent the shipping of air. And in some countries, we have some legislation, like Korea is one of those places. They have a national standard actually constrains that.
Yeah, they have a don't they, of how much space there can be around the product.
They can. That's absolutely correct. And how you calculate it.
Sick.
So, you know, it's said. So the first thing is setting up those packaging sustainability goals, and they're not very. They have a lot. You can interpret them in lots of different ways, but that then sets the scene for everyone. So you may not use one. Sorry, you'll always use one. That's the goal. You might
Yeah.
use a couple, but what you're not going to do is not use any. So you allow people the flexibility to choose the right packaging sustainability goal for the item.
Yeah. And then, like you say, if they, well, we managed to do that one, now we can try another one. Now we've managed to get that one. Oh, we've done all 4, you know. Um, I love the way that you managed to attach the blister to the cardboard without the glue because you kind of engineer it just to sit in it, didn't you?
Yeah, there's a little. Yeah, so you're creating like a little interlocking structure with the fiber, with the cardboard. So what you're doing is you're creating a mechanical structure that then prevents it from easily being pulled apart in store. It offers enough resistance to prevent, in-store to shop soiling or, sort of getting opened. But at the same time, when you take it home, it actually is it can't it oh basically it's easy to separate the two,
Yeah.
and then have a better potential recycling outcome.
Yeah. I love it. Sorry for throwing that on you, Greg, and you having to try and remember all 4 of those.
Five, five,
5 of them, sorry.
five. We got the same for product as well, though. That's the other thing.
About to say on the product piece, it'd be let's dig into that because obviously packaging isn't easier, but it's the first thing that gets thrown away. So there are more options because there's only so many materials that you make packaging from. But when it comes
Mhm.
to the actual product, that gets harder? Question mark?
Much. Yeah, a lot harder. Because one of the things that you have with packaging is in this comes down to all about developed markets. You've got
Mm,
curbside collection, you've got home collection. No other industry, like say, has you look at waste electronics, household goods, tools, sports goods. There is nothing has a home collection
mm,
any like it doesn't it's not there,
yeah,
and you then have to find and be able to guide people that have those material have those things and say what do I do with it next. And so it's a much bigger challenge just because there's a huge component of the materials recovery supply chain that just is not present. It's
mm,
just not there, and so that's one of the challenges. So but the first ones that we look at is using recycled feedstock. So that's an important one for us. That also reduces the carbon footprint of our toys directly.
yeah,
And it does it very, very well. And then also looking at non-fossil based as well. So trying to find other sources for, the polymers and the materials that we're actually using too. So it is a lot harder. So here we have recycled plush is actually relatively straightforward near where our head office is. Fortunately, we're really close by quite a large textile recyclers that we did a little bit of work with and said, yes, actually this is just like any other polyester piece of fabric. E-waste is
Is that where you got your recycle plush from then, rather than like an rPET from a bottle? Is it actually from a textile to textile rather than
uh,
a bottle?
so the rPET that we get, so the recycling that we do domestically in Australia is
Yeah,
different, much different to where we get our recycled feedstocks for our recycled plush.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Because yeah, they're completely geographically dislocated. But now we're also investigating molded. So instead of just looking at textiles, we've been doing a lot of work to say, okay, what else is available? In our main materials, whether they're an ABS or they're a PP, we are now seeing the accessibility of those polymers coming on the market that have GRS certification that we can see the chain of custody.
Yeah.
And that's actually a key part of it is that you can't greenwash, you can't make these claims about using these materials and not be able to absolutely back them up.
Mm.
If you cannot do this, do not do this.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't. Yeah. And there was so much greenwashing happening, 4 years ago, which still is some happening, but not as much because of regulation. And I think everybody's learned that you can't do that anymore. But you're right.
Mhm.
If you can't showcase where that materials come from, maybe you shouldn't be buying it because it's probably not what you think it is.
Well, that's the thing, and we go through when we're using these materials. The first thing we do is say, show us the paperwork. We need to know the chain of custody. We need to know the provenance. We need to know that we're confident about, that it is actually a recycled polymer. This is actually getting now, especially in Europe. So we import directly into Spain. Spain has a tax when you cross the border where you have to pay a levy with your import duties on the non-recycled plastic in your packaging. And
Mm.
the only way that you can actually qualify, GRS certification is not enough. There is a specific EN standard that you must comply with. And so we're going through the certification process because that's what we're aspiring to do, is say,
Yeah.
actually, we use recycled, we need to get a discount for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's now the requirement over the validation of those claims is now starting to become, it's a requirement. It's a need.
Do you think that, and I know that we're a few years ahead from digital product passports rolling out within toy. Do you think that once the DPPs roll out within toy, that's gonna help that? Do you think will it help
Uh,
complexity of that, do you think? Or is it all to be confirmed, to be discussed?
I think it's to be confirmed, because the example I've given you with Spain, this is a national tax that
Yeah,
happens at the import, and so what they're doing on the importation laws are completely disconnected from DPP. So,
yeah.
I think there are always going to be these conflicts, in this space with a digital product passport or not.
All these little anomalies that kind of come
Uh,
in for all these other markets. So then when we talk about thank you for that, Greg. When we talk about the actual products, you're always innovating. I'd love, you did a huge amount of innovation on glitter, didn't you?
yeah,
In your new pretzel products.
glitter's my pet
Not
hate.
glitter, whatever the new word's gonna be for it,
Well,
sparkling
no,
spirit.
no, it's all right. I mean, I'm not hating on the name, but we actually did a lot of work before the EU regulation came in, and it came in like a freight train, like, because there was no leeway. I think it was September 23 was when it came in, and it was like, no grace period.
Yeah.
You're getting it. That's it. And they've kind of been telling industry for a few years about it. And so it was just fortunate that we'd already started to say, hey, look, let's find alternatives.
Mm.
And the outcome of that was, when it came in, actually our SKU list was not significantly changed, but you had some ones that I think a lot of people were like instant snow has been around for ages, but sodium polyacrylate, when you look at the requirement, is this EU synthetic polymer microparticle regulation, and it's got three words in it. It's synthetic. Is it a polymer? Is it a microparticle? And when you qualify it as, yeah. So we had products that had, super absorbed polymers in there, like instant snow, and
Mm.
we just had to remove them. Um,
Just you didn't stop making the product, did you just or you just removed those and found a different
we actually had to remove the deadlines were pretty strict,
okay,
so it was
yeah.
actually, you had to drop it like pretty much straight away. But to be fair, we weren't grossly affected, and that was actually because there was a lot of work up front. So we were looking at, glitters that had glitter alternatives that were mica based.
Mm.
Now, our main mica that we use is not mined, so we actually use a synthetic mica that's made in a furnace.
Okay.
So if there's any negative connotations that would go about the procurement of that as a mined substance, we try and circumvent it and say, hey, pretty much everything that we use is actually synthetic. It also allows us to control the size, which is a key part of making glitter look good. So you
Yeah.
can have, like, people are familiar with mica in automotive paints and in
That's say
makeup.
some people don't know it, so it's a rock, isn't it?
It is. There's a whole family of micas. So that was one of them. And then we developed one that was actually the substrate, instead of being PET, was paper. And that worked really well. And also but the problem is with that one, when you put it in mold, it doesn't really pop. So
Mm.
we're now looking at an aluminium or a completely metal based, which does pop when you put it in mold. You can control the particle size. So
Mm.
now, instead of like just saying, oh, you just put PET glue in, you have to choose the right material for
Mm.
the application to get the visual result, actually. So yeah, there was quite a bit of work going into it.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing though? Because normally these things are just picked off the shelf. That's the glitter, that's the colour you want, pick it off the shelf, that's the price. As actually you're
Mhm.
having to go out and find innovative ways to do this that aren't microplastics, that are a
Mhm.
polymer, that that aren't don't break the law basically.
But in that we saw in that discovery process, we found lots of greenwashing. People were going, "Oh yeah, we've got biodegradable glitter," and you go, "Yeah, okay, let's look at the paperwork." And you get into the MSDS sheets, and very quickly you realise that it's a PLA And yes, PLA has a vegetable source in regards to polymer, but it's in the regulations to define it's a synthetic polymer. I'm saying that we were getting told it was compostable. PLA is compostable in a controlled industrial scenario, but they were
Not when
being
you're replacing glue.
presented as something that just degrades in the environment, which is absolute, it's just an absolute lie. And so that's the thing about having to make sure that it passes, desktop due diligence before even moving forwards and looking at designing something with it.
Yeah. I think somebody once said to me, "Sustainability is only expensive if you do the wrong thing, because you've just wasted a lot of money." 'Cause actually, if you're doing the right thing, it can actually be positive for your business because 'cause you're mitigating taxes and you're actually doing something that's better. But, if you
Yeah.
don't look into the detail, you just waste a huge amount of money on something that just doesn't tick the right boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's actually a huge part of sustainability now. So, we talked about when we started, but now where we sit, our sustainability sort of strategy and all the other bits and pieces. And, we talk about it, internally about bringing, the three things. So we've got three sustainability pillars. So we
Yeah,
have Mission Zero, which is our 2040 net zero goal. We've got Project Circularity that looks after the materials that we're using, our product, our packaging, and the processes as well. But then also we have environmental regeneration. So what we try and do is everything that we do has to sit within one of those three pillars. And if it
yeah,
doesn't sit properly, you don't do it. So
mm,
what it does is it creates the guardrails to work within.
yeah,
But then on that, we also have, well, how does it benefit the business? What is the outcome?
yeah,
So you've got your sustainability pillars, but then you've got your sustainability outcomes. And so our three outcomes are we commercially competitive? That's about the relationship.
yeah,
Are we bringing financial value? The clues in the name.
mm,
And then are we improving the sustainability? And they're the ways that actually you've got to think. I'm not doing this in an idealistic fashion. What I'm doing is I'm aligning with structures and guardrails. I'm aligning what our sustainability goals are, but I need to enhance the commercial value, and I need to enhance our financial value as well. I
yeah.
cannot sit down and think that we have the grace to be able to say, well, you can have it, but it costs more.
Doesn't work like that, and this is what I'd love to
Hmm.
dig into a little bit, because I know that we've had a lot of conversation about this as well in the past, where most people say, "This costs us more money, so we can't do it." Or they
Hmm.
might you say, "Well, they're a private entity based out in Australia. They're not constrained with the same elements that we are as a US-based company that's got a big board that says, 'No, you can or you can't do this.'" But actually,
Hmm.
everything that you've done, you've made sure that is commercially viable, and I think that, to me, is the genius behind all the stuff that you've been doing, because you're enabling it to get to market, not at a higher price, because we know consumers don't buy that. The consumers sustainability isn't the lead. It actually should be the brand, the product, the price, and sustainability should just be how it's made. And you guys have
Hmm.
managed. Oh, you're on the journey of doing it, and I'd love to. How do you? What is the magic behind that, Greg? How does that work?
I think you actually just said it. There is a bit where sustainability has to be a bit of smoke and mirrors in some respects, and it just has to come as a characteristic of it.
Mm,
Especially in toys, it's about the play pattern. It's about the experience that a child is going to get using that product, and that is the key parts. It's a form, fit, function, the play pattern, the story behind it, the association. These are all of the things that that is what those toys exist for. And what my job is, and what I
mm.
consider sustainability to be, is we need to dovetail into that, and they need to be able to bring all of those good stuff, and we just need to also improve the sustainability, a little bit in the back wings, in back stalls. That's actually where I think is important, because kids looking, one of a young girl or boy sitting right now in our, you know, center of our demographic, the toys that we make, say an 8-year-old, they're looking at it going, oh my God, I really want this. This is something I want to play with for hours and hours and hours and hours. They're not thinking, hey man, it's got FSC recycled. It's got, it's got,
I know,
30% recycled PET. Yeah, no, that just doesn't come into it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think it's up to business to do that differently. Oh my gosh, Greg, there were so many questions that I had for you that we haven't even got through. You know, we're a brand licensing industry. We were going to talk about how you work really closely with the BBC and Anita, and
And let's do that now, because you
what?
can't
Now,
forget those
before we
guys.
close, we can't not have that conversation. I know we're going to
Yep.
talk about circularity. We're just
Yep.
going to have to do a Greg 2.0 at some point later on in the year, and
Yep.
we'll go into circularity. But let's talk
But
about your relationship with the BBC, because I think that's been transformational for the industry, actually.
I think big shout out to Anita on that
Yay,
one.
Anita!
Working with Anita makes the job a pleasure, and it also makes it very easy when the licensor is actually very, very clear about what their sustainability goals are.
Yeah,
It makes it so much easier, and to be able to communicate that within our business, and actually, to have it in Las Vegas, with the the fireside chat with Wendy that turned, where then go, and here's Anita.
and
Um, you know,
Anita was just like, "I'm in this conversation."
Absolutely awesome. And that's actually how you get things done. It's when everybody links up. And so now to think we're hearing exactly what the licensors want, it then is passed to us, our responsibility to listen to that and
Mm,
actually go, all right, we've got to deliver on it. And then we work with our supply chain and all of our OEMs and our key partners to actually deliver it. So no, I think it is absolutely awesome to be able to work with the BBC. It's actually one of the really enjoyable components of the job.
mm,
They're super passionate about it. They know what they want, and they can actually communicate that really clearly. And hopefully, we're clear in how we can respond. We'd love
mm.
to do it faster, but at the same time, I think having that transparency as well has been good, and we try and support them in other areas as well when it comes down to improving the sustainability of all the products that we supply.
I love that, and I think Anita and the whole team at the BBC, you know, through Bluey and BBC Earth, have really kind of put their line in the sand of, you know, them as a business. They've got science-based targets. You know, they need to reduce
Hmm.
their impact.
Yep.
Licensing business is not
Yeah.
hidden away. It's very much part of that. So how do they take
Scope, was
them?
it Scope 3, Cat 14 or something?
Exactly. Well, it might be Cat 16. We don't know. It might
Is
be
it
Get
60?
Blue. Let's, you know, it's in the
Oh,
16. There might be a new category being created. Let's
yeah,
see.
okay.
We put together a methodology 2 years ago that's still up for approval. It's going through the motions, so let's see. Um, would you how many of the licensors that you work with give you targets, or is the BBC the main one that have said, "This is where we're heading"?
So the BBC is the main one, but we've had some really good wins with some of our other licensors, especially when it comes down to packaging formats that we were actually contracted and constrained. The design was constrained by the licensor for no negative reason. There was no malicious intent. It was actually, you had to do certain things because that was actually what we were contracted to do.
Yeah.
And one of them was actually to, move away from a packaging format that was 100% plastic. And we changed that to end up being around about 40% PET, 60% fiber. So, and that was through, engaging with them. It was through explaining with them, it was collaboration, and it was also readdressing, some legacy areas within our licensing contracts.
Yeah.
So I think I think given the right example, the right requirement, the right driver, that everyone will actually want to come to the party. But another example, Disney. Disney's
Oh,
another
great.
big licensor.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they run their supply locked program to educate their supply chain on, how to become a net zero business. Very, very conscientious
Mm.
as well. So I think we get it. I think the one thing about that stands out with working with the BBC is having that somebody like Anita there, definitely to be very, very clear and very supportive. And really that's actually just gold dust.
I agree, and I think that because Anita, yes, leads sustainability, but she wears sustainability as the hat because she's a business lead. So to me, actually, I think it's the business leads understanding where they're going as what they want to achieve as a company, and then the sustainability teams coming and supporting. I think that's what
Mhm.
we need to get to next. Very where you want to go. I just got one last question for you, Greg. Sorry. When we look,
That's all right.
let's take us, 5 years into the future. In five
Okay.
years' time, when you look back, what would you hope would have fundamentally changed? And if there's one thing that you'd love us all to come together for as an industry, what would that be?
So internal, I would say we will hit our near-term goals, and that we will have run and have a clearer understanding about what a low and no carbon product really looks like. I think it's a really important part. I think
Yeah.
it is an industry though. Fundamentally, as an industry, we've probably got two problems. One of them though is actually, us having access to recycled content. This has a huge impact in reducing our dependency on, on virgin fossil oils. And that power of the purchasing power, aggregated purchasing power, I think is one thing. If everyone could come together, there's that.
Mm.
But also looking at what happens at the other end, the fate. And I think that's another area there that if we can somehow come together and talk about that one as well. So one as an input is using more and more recycled feedstocks, and being able to draw on those to be able to get the price down to make the uptake greater. That would be awesome. But at the other end is actually coming together and really having a conversation about the fate. What happens after the toy is not played with anymore?
Yeah. End of life. We need to, let's pick that up. We've got some stuff that we're working on. We need to catch up on that one. Greg, I know you need to go. It's been an absolute pleasure. Wow, I learned so much more about you today as well. Who would have known? I've known you for years and I never knew your history with all the great work that you were doing in the engineering world. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the nenext few years here at POC and working together. So thank you very much.
It's been awesome, Helena. I got to say, you guys are